Yes, I have set up another tank. It's a 5-gallon that I had sitting around not being used, and all I want to do with this one is not keep any fish, but just use it to try to see if I can grow carpeting plants in a low-tech tank. Low-tech means you don't use a CO2 injection system. You just try to grow it with light and occasional dosage of liquid fertilizer and liquid carbon called Excel. And I've tried before. When I first started, I did try one of these plants, but at that time I really knew nothing. And the plants didn't do well. I really don't know much more, but I feel more confident in taking care of a tank than I used to. So everything here is spare stuff I had. Nothing is new except for the plants that I bought. I bought them yesterday. A couple of cups of tissue cultured ground cover plants, and a couple of plants for the left back corner there. The driftwood I had already. Everything was what I had already except for the plants. And so what I did this morning was clean out the tank, put in the soil, which I had spare bags of, fluval stratum, planted soil, and then basically what I did was I divided the tank into 3 sections because I wanted to try 3 different kinds of plants. And so these rocks are just little fragments of rocks that I have in my yard, and I broke it up to create, 3 sections. One section on the right, kind of a middle section, and a small back section. That back section has to be shallower because the filter intake tube goes down pretty far. So anyway, what I did was I got some what they call Monte Carlo, and you plant them a little bit apart, and as they grow, they spread and create a carpet if you're lucky. And in the middle section I wanted to try dwarf hairgrass, which I've never tried, and the same thing, you plant little sections of them a little bit apart, and then they're supposed to spread. I guess they send runners under the soil, and then new plants pop up. And then in the back I got a little package of Crypts, which I've never used. That's CRYPT. It's a root plant and kind of reddish green, and I've never grown Crypts, so I put 3 little bunches there. And then that taller green one is an Anubias fraseri, which is kind of a more narrow leaf Anubias. Anubias are rhizome plants, so you can't just stick them in the soil. The rhizome has to be above the soil, and then it sends out roots. And so what I often do is I just super glue the rhizome to a stone, little pebble, and that way I can put the plant wherever I want, and it's above the soil. And so hopefully the Crypt and the Anubias will ultimately cover the filter intake tube, so you don't notice it as much. Those 2 big pebbles on top of the driftwood. That driftwood is one I had left over, but it's been sitting out for a few months now, not in water, so if I put it in water, it just floats right to the top. Has to be waterlogged again. And so those two big pebbles are sitting on top of it until it gets waterlogged enough to stay down by itself. So those two big pebbles won't be there for very long. So this will be very interesting. I have to play around with how long I leave the lights on, what intensity of light I give it, dosing it with liquid fertilizer. I'm using something called Thrive that I had for my shrimp. It's shrimp safe, but it's a good plant fertilizer liquid. And then Liquid Excel, which is liquid carbon, and it's supposed to kind of be a substitute for having a CO2 system, but not as good as CO2 system. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, the light is a light I used to have here, and so I'm just reusing it. It's the Finex Planet Plus light, and so everything here was just the perfect spot for trying this experiment. I have no idea if it'll work, no idea if I'll kill these plants or not, but it'll be interesting to see. Who knows, I might even get a cheap CO2 system to try that out too, because I've never done that either. Okay, so that's my new experiment. It'll be easier in that I don't have to worry about keeping fish alive or shrimp alive. Basically, you know, with plants, you just kind of feed it every so often, I guess. Give it the amount of light that it needs, which that will be kind of, I'll be playing around with that because I really don't know. Trimming it as it grows out, which I hope it does. So it'll be easy upkeep, but interesting to see if I can do this. Okay, that's about it. So long.